Should I stay or should I go? In other words, is this time to work on your marriage, or is it time to run like your hair's on fire?
Yeah, and I think where this really came out of is not necessarily having that conversation specifically with divorcing people. I think that divorcing people are usually at a phase where they know which side of the fence they're on,
Right.
But
True.
I think what's interesting is when we get further down the road and we've processed, a lot of my coaching clients end up looking back and saying, should I have done this sooner? Did I wait too long? I don't think it comes right at that crisis point where you actually are making the decision of should I stay or should I go? Because I think in that moment, most people have either hit their threshold and they're out, or they're hanging on to their marriage for dear life. And I think that's when we process and get down the road and get further emotionally removed and all that kind of thing, where you start going, would this have been better if I'd done it sooner, or should I stuck it out longer, or whatever?
There are the kind of relationships that are crazy. There's a lot of drama and a lot of fighting. And I call that, this is a term that my mother gave me, a faux adieu, which is, basically a folly of two people, right? And then on the other side, we have these cases where people tell me their stories, and it's like, she says tomato and I say tomato, we've fallen out of love. I hear that all the time. I had a guy tell me that the other day. I said, so what's going on? He says, we've fallen out of love. In other words, there are cases that are reasonably healthy relationships that have some soluble problems. And then there are those relationships that are so intense and conflictual and crazy making that you feel like you're constantly being sucked into this huge spinning vortex.
They're toxic.
I would say the biggest thing is there's a certain lack of self-control involved in it. It's just, you get so upset about the issues, whatever issues you're fighting about, that you can't sheath your dagger.
Yeah. There's no limit. You go for the jugular every time.
Right.
And both people go for the jugular every time. There's no restraint on, I really shouldn't go there. I really shouldn't say this or that.
Yeah. So he's saying, he'll say something like, that guy that you work with, you seem pretty chummy with him. And she'll say, it's none of your business.
Right.
And he'll say, he'll try to get a rise out of her. And he'll say something like, if you didn't act like such a slut around him, And then she gets mad and she says, if you could, perform for more than 10 minutes, it tends to go in a circle, like,
an upward spiraling circle.
An upward spiraling circle, which not unusually leads to family violence.
Right.
So how do we know that we're in a faux adieu? Well, one of the telltale signs is that all your friends are telling you to get away from him or get away from her. Okay. And your mother, oh my goodness, listen to your mother.
Amen.
Your mother knows you better than anyone else. And she knows if you're in a relationship that's toxic for you. And she sits there and she worries. Right? Dad, But mom, you got to listen to your mom. And listen to your friends. I remember, I don't want to tell a personal story.
Yeah.
But a certain person that shall go nameless got with a certain person who was toxic to him.
Who shall go nameless.
And it was, and not that she's a bad person, but it was a toxic relationship.
Right. And everybody around you, everybody has told me since then that everybody around you knew that was a bad situation for both of you. Yeah,
it's a toxic relationship. And these relationships never end well. The hallmark of this is, there's a certain inability that you have to control your own behavior.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that you know. And it's almost always actually on both sides.
Right.
So you say the most hurtful thing, and then they say the most hurtful thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then somebody gets hit and somebody gets arrested.
Right.
And I've seen it be the girl. It's usually the guy, but I've seen the girl get arrested before.
Yeah, we've seen it be both.
So, if you're in a relationship where you can't control your own behavior, if you can't stop lashing out,
right,
then I think you have to think about, is this a relationship that you need to be in?
Right.
Or is it destroying your life?
So if anything we've just talked about in the last 10 minutes, you're nodding your head. If you're nodding your head while you're listening to this, let me just tell you.
You might be a redneck.
You're in the should I go piece, okay? And the answer is yes. Yes, you should. You should go. Because, what this becomes, if you have kids, this becomes, conflict in front of your kids. This is how the example of how that you're setting for your kids of how to resolve conflict, how to have a marriage, how to interact with a mate, the level of respect that you expect from that other person. All of those things you're modeling. And, if you have a child that's younger than 5, I could go into the scientific data, but I'll just say you can go out and research all this, but your child is literally absorbing an imprint of everything that's being done around it as an example. So everything that you are doing, they are absorbing as the way to be in the world because they don't have that filter yet because they're so little.
Right. And a lot of being in relationships is kind of rolling with the punches. Right. And maybe she does say something that hurts your feelings. Maybe she says something about you never being home and not getting her needs met, and you feel hurt. As the guy, you feel hurt because you feel like she doesn't appreciate the sacrifices you make, and a lot of times you have to roll with those punches a little bit and accept certain annoying habits the way they are.
Right.
But if you can't do that, then you might be in this kind of faux adieu, which never ends well. I would say that they virtually always end in divorce.
Yeah. The second type of situation we see is where people come in and they just are like, oh, like Thomas said, she says tomato, I say tomato. We just don't love each other anymore. We did.
You
Been
say
a good
potato,
run,
I say potato.
but it's over,
Right. Let's call the whole thing off. Isn't
Yeah.
that what the song's about?
Yeah. And it's funny because no matter how many times I personally think that one is extremely rare. I think people come in sometimes, especially for mediation, and they give this presentation that they're just simply out of love or that it's mutual or all these things. But I am telling you, every time we dig into this, there's one person that's leaving and one person that's left that doesn't want the divorce. I would say that stories of people reconciling and staying together are few and far between. We've had a handful of those in our work, but I get asked that sometimes, and it's not the most common thing that happens. That doesn't mean it's hopeless, but I've heard a lot of people say that once they got through that hump in their marriage, that the best things of it were on the other side of that hump.
Well, I would go further than that and say every marriage has one of those turning points. To me, having the family is everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. And I would be miserably unhappy if I didn't have that.
That's true now at this age,
Yeah.
but that was not necessarily true of you at 20 or 30.
What are you trying to say?
I'm just saying as we get older, that
Are you saying
shifts.
I'm no longer a jerk?
No,
I'm no longer a monkey's butt?
I'm saying you're less of a jerk.
Wow. I'm not sure I should have. I wrote this topic and now I'm wishing I didn't.
All right. So, we've kind of gone off the rail a little bit, but essentially, if you are just saying, oh, it's Tuesday, I want a divorce because I don't feel like doing this anymore, or you're saying you're falling out of love. Number one, I call bull, what? because that's almost never true in my experience.
You call bovine manure.
Yes. But let's say that one person is saying they're falling out of love and you're the other person and you really want to save it, or the other person is open to working on it, they're just not feeling the love right now. What do you suggest?
Well, there's this wonderful book called The Love Dare. It's based on a Christian movie called Fireproof. And I'm not sure you have to be a Christian to do this, although
Right.
it helps because it is a Christian-themed book. But the Love Dare just involves doing things for the other person to show your love without expecting anything in return.
Right.
So, and you escalate, and you don't, even if they react negatively or storm off, or, you just keep relentlessly loving them. And sometimes that can rekindle the love in the other person when they realize that really you do love them.
And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.